and a very good evening, everyone. I hope you all are having a great week and are in best of your health. IndieCube is happy to associate with Numetrics as a knowledge partner, and we have collaborated with the vision to spread awareness on security within our community. Numetric is a cybersecurity consulting firm that helps organizations primarily not limited to infotech, agri-tech, fintech domain and to protect their IT and data assets and follow all security compliances globally. Some of the services Numetrics provides are managed security services, SOC 2 reports, and VAPT. I would like to welcome you all to our webinar today on security for startups, things that matter. Our speaker today, Mr. Shailendra Singh, is currently the Cybersecurity Chief Consultant at Numetrics. He is an industry leader who has worked with large and well-known organizations in implementing their information security program and towards their InfoSec objectives. He also holds CISSP, CISM, CISA, ISO 2001 lead auditor certifications. Today, he'll talk about security for startups, things that matter. You'll be able to understand the key risk in a startup organization and important focus areas to improve your security while retaining the agility and managing cost. And as we all know, these are the things very important for a startup. Now, before we start our session, few housekeeping rules. If you have any questions or queries, please use the chat box option or raise hand option. Your queries will be answered at the end of the session in Q&A time. And request you all to be in mute mode for the smooth flow of the session. I once again welcome Mr. Shailendra. Now the stage is all yours. Over to you.
I was starting to say that personally, I kind of like the idea of startups focusing on security because increasingly everyone is aware now that what is the status of security, in general globally, and how it is deteriorating fast on one side. On the other side, how quickly privacy laws are evolving to prevent major issues in the future. And given the focus areas that startups need to prioritize, security tends to kind of fall in the lower end of that spectrum. And because of this, I have seen personally that there are a lot of problems that startups face. So that is why this particular topic is quite interesting for me personally. Having given that introduction, I would like to explain that how exactly are we going to go about this session. My primary objective is that if we have a discussion-oriented session where if any kind of a doubt comes up in your mind or you need further clarification while I'm explaining and providing my opinion on how your startup should focus on security, then that would be appreciated. You can go ahead and interrupt, as Shambhavi mentioned, and I'll address it to the best extent possible. But the idea is that the content has been prepared in such a manner that we can cover it in the allocated time and also have about 15 minutes of time for Q&A at the very end. Having said that, let's proceed to the learnings that we intend to obtain from this webinar. First one is, I want to talk about what are the key levers of security that startups need to focus on. There are way too many parameters and variables involved when it comes to deciding as to what exactly a startup should do to improve its security while at the same time managing costs, because security is a costly affair and effectively it is a cost center. And also to not let security take so much of attention and time and focus that the business objectives are become deprioritized. So we'll talk about the key levers for security for startups. The second one is one thing that I would rather prefer, all of the participants to know as to what are the key differences in the expectations when it comes to B2B clients and versus B2C clients. And this is specifically important because if you know these expectations, you can predict and plan for how will you handle security in your organization, which will depend on whether your target audience, your target clients are from the B2B space or from the B2C space. The third thing that commonly is a problem that I have seen is a problem or a question mark that most founders face is to whether go for certification or not, how do you decide on that, and what are the certifications? I'll briefly explain those as well. We will be looking at the standards and frameworks and regulations and mandates that could be applicable to your startup. Now, this is something that takes a lot of time and assessment and evaluation to decide as to which standard or framework or regulation or mandate you may wish to choose for yourself or may apply to you. But then you will be able to judge once we go through this, that what exactly is the path that you wish to take. And then no matter what decision you take when it comes to security, there are definitely a security checklist, which I would call as the must-do security checklist. This, what we should classify it as, the basic of security, and does not matter what are the key levers applicable to you, whether you are serving B2B client or B2C clients, whether you are choosing to go for certification or not, whether you intend to comply with any standard or framework or regulation. None of that matters. This security checklist is a must do. So having said that, let's look at the key levers for security. So see, when it comes to the key levers that will apply to you, there are a lot of variables. There are a lot of parameters and factors that go into deciding that to what extent should you be implementing security. And these are the most important ones as far as I think I can think of. One is that which industry are you serving? So for example, let's say you're building an application that is going to be serving the banking industry, versus you are building an application that is going to be targeting manufacturing industry. So the focus of security, the need for security, this will vary significantly. Banking industry is heavily regulated, and there are a lot of mandates that the regulatory bodies impose on them. And this will mean that in turn, they will be imposing a lot of security related mandates on you. Effectively, your need for implementing security will be higher if we, let's say, make a comparison with the manufacturing industry. The second factor would be that what is the extent of PII that you're saving? And PII is personally identifiable information. No matter what kind of IT startup you are, you're likely to be saving name and email and mobile number. That is the de facto standard in building any application. But then, depending on your business model, depending on what is the objective of the application that you're building and the solution that you're providing, the amount of information that may be generated in your system or transmitted or stored may vary or will vary depending on what exactly is the solution that you're building. You need to consider that out of all of this data that is being generated, what are the ones that are classified as PII, personally identifiable information. All of the data security laws, they focus on PII. So effectively, if you are holding a lot of PII, you need to implement a lot more security. Besides that, your clients themselves will insist that you implement a lot of security. The third factor is what is the volume of data. So let's say combining it with the second point, which is you are saving a lot of PII, but the volume of data that you are saving is relatively small and is likely to remain small for the foreseeable future, in which case your need for security will be lower in comparison to, let's say, a startup that is for example, an AI system or an ML system, which inherently need a lot of data to work properly. So you need to account for this fact that what is the volume of data that you're either generating or transmitting or storing. And the simple way to judge that is how many tens of thousands of data points, specifically PII data points, are going through your system. And when I say going through your system, it is either your system itself could be generating that data, or you could be collecting and storing it, or you are like an intermediary and the information or the data is being transmitted through your system. So you need to consider from that point of view. The other aspect when it comes to implementation security now is which regions and countries that you serve, because every country and every region is now coming up with its own data privacy law, and all of these privacy laws have their own expectations in terms of to what extent security should be implemented. So for example, if let's say your application is intended for the European market or the US market, so you will have to review what their privacy laws and the data security laws that are applicable to you, and what is it that they expect in terms of security. And based on that, then you create your own security checklist. And finally, the two aspects, that is maturity of your application, and I'm assuming here that all of the participant members are people who have built some kind of an application, because that is where most of the focus of security lies in the IT field and the IT startups. But even if you do not have an application, maybe you are providing some kind of services, then also you should consider what stage of business you are in. Now, what I mean by this is, security is important and the laws are becoming tougher, but contrary to what could be popular opinion, it is not something that I recommend strongly that you take up security at the very outset. The reason being, the more focus that is there on security, the more likely you are required to allocate resources. It could be in terms of time or money or in terms of people. You will have to allocate these resources towards achieving the security objectives, which in turn means that they will have less time and less resources available for allocating to improving business. And one fundamental aspect should never be forgotten, no matter what is the stage of your business, which is that if the business exists, you will have need for security. But if there is no business, there's not going to be any need for security. Effectively speaking, security is an outcome of the business existing. And that is why you should tie the need for how much security you intend to implement to the stage of business that you're in. What is the maturity of the organization or the company that you have built? You need to assess that. Now, if you combine all of these levers, you can put it in this term that is commonly used in the information security field, which is, what is your risk appetite? I have seen organizations where the general opinion was that we do not care about security at all. We have been lucky so far that a security breach has not happened so far, and our clients have not asked for a lot of security. And we will continue that practice, which is, in my personal opinion, quite dangerous, because you are leaving matters to chance. On the other hand, I have seen organizations where security is a very high level of focus, even though maybe it is not really required to that extent. You will have to decide for yourself that what exactly your risk appetite is. If your risk appetite is lower for security, then in that case, you need to implement a lot of security. If your risk appetite is higher, you're willing to take chances for your own business, for the data that belongs to your clients and your customers. Once you decide that, you can judge that what are the levers and parameters that you'll be using to decide as to what extent of security you wish to implement. Having said that, the next thing that I want to talk about is the B2B versus B2C clients. Here, this distinction is something that I wanted to highlight, because this is what has been my general observation throughout my experience, that if you are a startup that is going to be serving enterprise clients, you should expect that you will be subjected to a lot of security due diligence and security scrutiny. And the reasons for them are because either the enterprise clients themselves have got a very highly mature security process and function in their organization, and they wish to not only implement it within their own organization, but to all of their vendors and suppliers as well. Or because they are enterprise clients and the industry and space that they work in, there are a lot of regulatory mandates on them, and a lot of times these regulatory mandates themselves insist that not only will you be ensuring security for yourself, but you will be ensuring that your vendors and suppliers are secure as well. In comparison, you will observe that if you are serving the B2C space, there is not much of security. And the one key difference is that you should expect that there'll be absolutely no security audits conducted, because retail clients are not going to be conducting any kind of a audit on you. But then you should expect that there may be some kind of a governing or regulatory body that will mandate that you implement security in a certain manner. And this is something that is the role being played nowadays by the privacy laws, because all of the privacy laws are principally meant to keep those enterprises in control and to ensure that they are implementing sufficient amount of security, specifically where their customers are not likely to be either be aware of what security implications are there of poor security for that matter, or they are not likely to be having that authority or power over your organization, which is not the case in B2C organizations. In B2C organizations, it often happens this way, that if you do not agree to their expectations of data security, and sometimes formally in terms of data security clauses being included in the agreements themselves, which is where you're signing off that you will implement a certain extent of security that is satisfactory to your client. There, the authority your client gains over you is simple, that if you do not undertake to implement security to the extent that satisfies us, we will not be providing business to you. Effectively speaking, it becomes a business roadblock for you. Now, these are aspects that do not apply to B2C almost entirely. Like, there are no B2C organizations where the clients are raising issues that your security is not good enough, and that is where the governing and regulatory bodies step in, and they start mandating and penalizing organizations if they do not have high level of security. So you have to decide at the very outset that given that already that whether you're going to be serving B2C clients or B2B clients, what is the level of security that you will be implementing. And you should have this implied assumption that if you are going to be serving B2B, specifically enterprise clients, the expectations of security will be quite in depth. The minimum that I have expected from or I have observed from them is they will expect that you will implement security which is equal to or more than what they have implemented themselves, which is quite high. Now, for startups, that becomes quite kind of a challenge, but you should accept these costs as strategic investments, because if you have enterprise clients, then typically speaking, your business model will be such that you will be more easily and quickly be able to absorb those high costs of security, right? So having said that, let's move on to the decision on whether you want to certify yourself or not. When I say certify, I'm referring to the information security standards like ISO 27001 or PCI DSS or SOC 2, or maybe even the regulatory aspects. Now, when it comes to regulations, there's no concept of certification because no one will be granting you a certificate. You will predominantly be self-certifying, but then does not matter whether you are going for external certification or internal, you will still need to um, evaluate your entire organization against the standard or the regulation, and you'll have to invest significant amount of time. So even the act of becoming compliant, you should consider it to be equivalent to undergoing the external certification audit itself. And these are the ways in which you can judge that whether you should be going for any kind of a formal certification. First one is whether there is any kind of a regulatory mandate on you. And the most common example that comes up where I observe where a regulatory mandate insists that even a startup is certified is either you are serving the finance domain, specifically involving card data, in which case PCI DSS automatically applies to you, and it is a requirement by PCI Council that you get yourself PCI certified, without which you are not even likely to get business from your clients, because your clients themselves will be aware of this fact that any vendor that deals with card data must have PCI certification. Another example that comes to my mind is where let's say you're serving the Indian banking industry, for example. Then RBI mandates that even the vendors, they need to be obtaining ISO 27001 certification. So you will have to evaluate that what are the regulations that apply to you, what do these regulations talk and expect in terms of certification, and based on that you will have to make a decision whether you will be actually taking up the certification activity or not. The second is client requirement. You specifically, if you're a B2B startup, then in that case your clients, when you start approaching them at the very outset of your prospecting phase in the sales cycle, they will come up with a requirement of security due diligence being conducted, and sometimes you'll observe that they will insist that you obtain certification, if not uh, immediately, then in the near short term. And the reason for that is because most organizations have now realized that although certifications do not guarantee security, they provide a reasonable level of assurance, and effectively these certifications have kind of become a hygiene factor when it comes to providing any kind of a product or service to enterprise clients. The third parameter is whether you are looking for peace of mind, and this is more of a subjective thing. It entirely depends on the founders, their mindset as to whether security breach rather, is something that is likely to worry you, specifically assuming that you are going to be collecting a lot of data. Maybe you are going to be serving clients and their data is with you. And does the idea that if a security breach happens, what happens to my organization, is something that bothers you? If it does, then in that case, maybe you may want to choose to be certified, because certification definitely improves your security posture. It is by design, that is how the concept of certification in the field of information security works, that there will be an external auditor who will need to be satisfied that you have implemented adequate level of security, and if they're not satisfied, you will not be granted that certification. So you need to match it up with whether having a certification will give you a certain peace of mind. If it does, then in that case, you should go ahead and get yourself certified. The fourth one is what I mentioned earlier, which is if you have a lower risk appetite, you are very sensitive to the idea of security breach, you do not want it to happen, then in that case, again, so related to the third point, if you have a lower risk appetite and you need peace of mind, then in that case, you should go ahead and get yourself certified. And the fifth point, which is brand image. Having certifications definitely helps in the sales process, because when you're certified, and let's say your competitor who's pitching for the same business from your clients, they are not certified, then you are definitely going to be having an advantage. That is one benefit that you will derive out of having certifications. The other aspect that applies to nowadays to B2C clients is, if you are an organization that holds certifications, then you are likely to be able to justify to both your retail users, end users, as well as to the governing bodies or the regulatory bodies, that we have obtained the certification, and that is why your opinion of us should be more favorable, and which in turn automatically leads to more business, right? So you should decide which of these aspects apply to you, what is your opinion on them, what is your evaluation or assessment of the situation, and then based on that, you should go ahead and decide that whether you need to get your organization certified or not. Now, before I proceed to actually looking at the specific certifications and the standards frameworks, I would like to point out that certification does not necessarily mean that you obtain external validation and obtain a real certificate. You might as well just choose to be compliant with the standard, because most of these standards are either available freely from their creators, or if not, they're available, the standard documentation is available at a very nominal cost. You can obtain them, conduct a self-evaluation, implement all of the expectations of the standard, and just skip the external audit phase, which is something that happens at the very end anyway. Now, what this results in is that you may not hold the certification, but at least you will have that self assurance that I am at a reasonable level of security, and I'm aware of that. I consciously know that where do I stand. Besides that, if let's say you do not feel that you need to go for a certification, and yet you are a B2B service provider or product provider, your enterprise clients may not always insist that you hold certifications, as long as you're able to provide sufficient evidence and prove that even though you do not hold the certification, you have gone ahead and implemented those aspects. Yes, it is tedious, it is time consuming. Every single enterprise client that you target, you will need to satisfy them separately, which is something that you can do away with if you just present a certificate that proves the very same thing. But it will at least save you the trouble of undergoing the external audit, preparing for it, managing it. Another aspect that applies when it comes to certifications is that it is not a one-time affair. It is something that is an ongoing process, and all of the certifications mandate that you undergo the external audit once every year. So you can probably skip that cost, avoid it altogether, maybe avoid all of the trouble related to managing the external audit, but you go ahead and implement everything else. Having said that, these are the typical standards and regulations and frameworks that you should evaluate yourself against. First aspect being whether do they apply to you. Second aspect being, if they apply to you, do you wish to implement yourself or do you wish to actually go for the external certifications? The third aspect is that to what extent do you wish to commit to this in terms of not only resources but in terms of time frame. You have to be aware of this fact that no matter which certification you take up, um, the amount of time and effort that is required or the expectation of the standard effectively entails the same amount of effort whether you are a 10 people startup or 100 people or 200 people, does not matter. Now when you're a larger startup with sufficient number of people, adequate amount of revenue stream, you can allocate that budget, no matter what the resources may be. But if you're a nascent startup, just a few people, and you're just starting out, it may be very tough for you to take up the certification, in which case then I would recommend that you go ahead and certify yourself, whereas you not go for the external audit. And these are the certifications that apply, could apply to you. ISO 27001, which is by ISO for information security. If you are in the financial industry, financial domain, specifically handling card information, and the simplest way of judging whether PCI DSS applies to you or not is, does your application or organization in any way either process or transmit or store card data? And when we say card data, you should go with the implied assumption that if you are storing the entire card data because it is something that is necessary for your application to function, then in that case it will definitely apply to you. There are exceptions when it comes to PCI DSS, where if let's say you're not storing the entire card data but only let's say the last 6 digits or last 4 digits, and you are definitely not storing CVV, then you may be exempted from it. But frequently it will happen that even though you PCI DSS does not apply to you, your clients may still mandate it to you, and they will come with a statement that if you do not obtain PCI DSS certification, we will not provide your business to you. So sometimes it could be that the standard itself helps you identify that whether it is applicable to you or not, and your clients are okay with that. Sometimes you will find out that yes, the standard applies, but then you just need to implement it. You do not need to get yourself certified, whereas your clients insist that unless until you get yourself certified, we will not be providing our business to you. So depending on the specific scenario, you can judge as to whether you go ahead and get yourself certified or not. The next one is SOC, where if you are specifically focused on the US region, the situation there is that there is a similarity in what you implement under SOC versus ISO 27001, because SOC itself does not prescribe any specific standards or controls. SOC is open-ended. It only works on the basis of principles. Now, when you are required to comply with a set of principles, you are free to choose what you implement as long as they align to those principles. And frequently it happens that organizations that obtain SOC certification, they will go ahead and choose ISO 27001 as the standard that they are actually implementing, which in turn leads to the organization being able to undergo a SOC audit and obtain a SOC report. The things to keep in mind when it comes to SOC is that if you're not serving the US region, you can go ahead and skip it altogether and probably choose ISO 27001. If you are serving US, even there is some amount of openness that, okay, you may not have a SOC report, but then you have ISO 27001, that is good enough for us. But frequently I've seen that, US based clients, they have got a personal preference towards SOC, and which means that you may need to comply with them. The other aspect of certification are the regulations, which is EU GDPR, which is a global privacy law. Does not matter which region or geography you're serving. I strongly recommend that you go ahead and evaluate yourself against EU GDPR. Now, one key thing to keep in mind is that when it comes to regulations, there is no certification. No one will go ahead and sign off for you saying that, yes, I have evaluated you and you are compliant with EU GDPR. The way it always works is that your own InfoSec team, or maybe your InfoSec service providers, like for example us, we will go ahead and evaluate you and your organization and the processes and the systems and the application, and decide that what are the changes that need to be brought in all of these asset types so that you become compliant with GDPR. The next one is HIPAA, specifically if you are provider of some kind of a service or a product for the healthcare space for the US region. If you are serving healthcare industry anywhere else, you do not need to be self-evaluating yourself against HIPAA, but then it is recommended that you go ahead and do that because the expectations of HIPAA are slightly different from all the other InfoSec standards. The key difference being that instead of focusing on PII, HIPAA focuses on PHI. PII stands for personally identifiable information, whereas PHI stands for personal health information. And there are significantly more impositions on the organization that handles healthcare information because it is considered sensitive. It is considered significantly more damaging if there is a security breach. So that is why the mandates are more stringent, and this is something that is covered by HIPAA. Effectively, no matter which region you are serving, if you are in the healthcare space, it is strongly recommended that you go ahead and self-evaluate yourself based on HIPAA. Finally, we come to the framework that you can implement. Now, by default, certification for frameworks do not exist. Again, similar to regulations, you are supposed to self-evaluate, but there are fundamental differences in whether you are choosing a framework that is meant for compliance versus whether you're choosing a framework that is meant for improving the security of your application, because they are parallel tracks in the information security field. For compliance, you can choose something like CSA star CAIQ, freely downloadable. It is a very, very well formed and well defined set of checklist which maps all of the information security standards that are likely to apply to you. So effectively, if you undertake this self-assessment based on CSA star CAIQ, you will automatically end up evaluating your organization and your processes and your systems based on multiple standards. And this is something that will quickly give you the status of your security and your security posture. In parallel, if you have an application, then in that case, application security is something that has to be at the top of your focus list when it comes to improving your security. And mostly the applications that are being built nowadays are cloud-based SaaS applications, because that is where the entire application industry, application development industry is headed from. Historically, where you built applications and then they were implemented on premise for your clients, and you built an application specifically for one client, and the next client that it came across, you would build an application custom made for them. That is now quickly becoming history, and all of the application providers, they are trying to move to a subscription based cloud implemented SaaS model, software as a service. When it comes to software as a service, by default, your application will be accessed either through a browser, or it will be accessed through API calls, or you could have a mobile application that ultimately makes API calls in the backend. Does not matter that what exactly is the mode of communication with your VPC and application. The concepts of OWASP, which is Open Web Application Security Project, that framework will apply to you anyway. And it's a very, very good framework for evaluating how secure your application is. What I recommend is that if you have the technical know-how, then in that case, you can go ahead and evaluate yourself based on the OWASP framework. If not, then in that case, you should go ahead and hire the services of external organizations that have got expertise in this. And having said that, let's move to the last phase, which is the must-do security checklist. As I said earlier, the primary focus should be that you conduct application security, specifically VAPT, vulnerability assessment and pen testing on your application. Ensure that you have identified all of the vulnerabilities that exist in your system. Ensure that you are trying to break into your system as hackers would do, and see whether it is something that you're succeeding in. What are the weaknesses that you find in your system, and you go ahead and plug them as quickly as possible. Related to application security is your infrastructure security, meaning if your application is secure but your infrastructure is not, then instead of breaching your application, hackers will go ahead and breach your infrastructure, and they will probably get direct access to your VPC environment, direct access to your databases, which is just as bad as an application security breach. So simultaneously, while you are improving your application security, you should improve your infrastructure security as well, which means that you should be conducting VAPT for your VPC and your LAN. In parallel, whatever are the servers that you have implemented, you should be hardening them. There are CIS benchmarks available for this. These benchmarks will provide you scripts that you can run to ensure that your application, wherever they are set up, the underlying operating systems, they are hardened enough so that they do not have these loopholes and weaknesses that can be exploited by hackers. The next focus area which I frequently see is something that is missed out, for even the first few years in the future of a startup, which is access control. This is something that is very easily implemented, and if you build this as a cultural aspect in your organization, it is something that becomes much more easier to improve upon as time passes. Whereas the contrary also holds true, that if you do not implement adequate level of access control at the very beginning, then to switch over to secure ways of managing access control later on becomes quite tough. And if you bake this access control aspect into the culture of your organization, you're likely to be facing fewer problems in terms of improving it, as well as fewer risks to your security itself. And when it comes to access control, naturally you should implement things like multi-factor authentication, complex passwords, password management policies should be set up for your whatever systems that allow you to do that. The basics of it, like approval mechanisms to ensure that if higher level of access is supposed to be provided to someone, then in that case necessary approvals are obtained from the owners of those systems to ensure that people are not obtaining access randomly and in an uncontrolled manner. You should also conduct access reviews regularly, where you perform quick checks that the as of today, the people who have access to your systems, are they authorized or not, or do you observe anything that is questionable? And in that case, you go ahead and remove those people as quickly as possible, because this is one of the key things that happens, that when hackers breach your system, they are not likely to announce it in obvious ways. They will probably remain in your system for quite a bit of time, and there will be identifiers or that there are people who are unauthorized who are in your system. And one of the key identifiers is there will be unknown and unidentifiable user accounts in whatever system that has been breached. So if you conduct regular access reviews, you will quickly identify that something is wrong, and probably you'll be able to take corrective action before it becomes a major public disaster for you. And when it comes to access control, these are the various asset types that you should focus on: your VPC environment, your cloud, your application itself that you have built. So ideally you should have role-based access control system built into the application itself from the very outset. Your storage locations, wherever your data is being stored, whether it is S3 or blob storage in Azure, whatever storage you may be using. Your endpoints, your computers, the computers that are being used by your people, and your systems. Now when I say systems, a lot of organizations now are starting to use systems provided by external uh, providers, application providers, for their non-core functions. So for example, your HRMS, your finance management system, your emailing system, Google Workspace and Office 365 being the most common. So these are the things that also need securing, because if you do not secure them and they get breached, effectively an intelligent hacker will find their way to your VPC environment eventually. Okay, and next one is your ISMS, your Information Security Management System. You should definitely define the most important policies which become part of your ISMS, and information security policy is the one that is the parent governing policy. Based on that, then you may have a need to define your acceptable usage policy, your password management policy, and instead of wondering that what this policy should be, you should use the guidance of your clients, your regulations that apply to you, the standards and frameworks, that what are the typical policies that should be defined in your organization. And if you run a quick search, you will find a lot of templates and samples of these policies online. While I recommend that you go ahead and use those for your purpose, the one observation that I frequently made is that they are simply a copy paste of something that is available on the internet, and which is a very, very bad practice, because the context of your organization is not the same as any other organization, and these templates are just that. They are, they should be used as guidances, which means that you should take the time to read through what is written in these templates, modify them, update them, add things that are specifically applicable to your context, and then finally approve them and publish them internally within your organization. Just do not do a copy paste job for the sake of assuring and satisfying yourself that you have the ISMS defined. That is not the way to define ISMS. Typically speaking, you should be taking 2 or 3 months of time to define your ISMS, which begins with obviously some kind of a template. And related to policies are plans. What do you do in case a disaster happens? What do you do in case any system fails? Those are like your business continuity plans, or your incident management plan, or your risk management plan. All of these things you should go ahead and define, because your policies will mandate that you actually carry out these activities, and then your plans will indicate that how do you carry out these activities. And then you could have your playbooks, like for example, incident response playbook, or vulnerability management playbook, or your business continuity and disaster recovery management playbook. Entirely depends on what is it that you define in your policies. And then the final aspect in case of security checklist is something that has got the least amount of focus when it comes to improving security, and which has got significant impact on the security of your organization. You may implement all the necessary systems and technologies throughout your organization, in your VPC environment, in your office LAN, in your application. You can have web application firewall, network firewall, gateway antivirus, endpoint firewall, SIEM. There are like countless technologies that are necessary to improve your security, and these are all technologies, which means they're all systems. But if your people are not educated about InfoSec, you can be sure that sooner or later someone will make a mistake. Either they will become a victim of social engineering attack, and they will give out their username password to one of these critical systems that you have implemented, or they may end up clicking some kind of a link that installs some malware, or it could be that they have kept on skipping the Windows update, for example, and because of which there is a 0-day vulnerability that a particular malware exploits, and then a ransomware spreads throughout your entire network. Or they could go ahead and misconfigure one of these critical systems, and which then ultimately is breached by a hacker. If your people are not aware of what InfoSec means, what are their obligations when it comes to security, what are the things that they need to be aware of to catch and identify whether they are being victimized, you can be sure that sooner or later, no matter how many security technologies you have implemented, you are likely to become a victim. Like when I say you, I mean to say the entire organization is likely to become a victim of a security breach, right? So educate your people, and education does not need to be an extensive affair. There are a lot of online videos, even for that matter on YouTube, that you can mandate that people watch, and then you conduct an assessment. And as I always have believed, and it should be the case by default, no education should be considered complete unless and until you are actually assessing your people, that have they learned what your program intended them to learn, right? So you must ensure that you are assessing them, and the more frequently the better, because inherently when assessments come into picture, people tend to stand up and pay attention to the subject matter, and this ensures that people will not become a victim of a breach, and in turn your organization will not become a victim of a breach. So having said that, this is the end of it, and this is what we looked at: key levers of security for startups, security expectations of B2B versus B2C clients. B2B clients expect more. B2C clients, usually the governmental bodies and the regulatory bodies are the ones who act on behalf of B2C clients. You looked at what are the parameters and variables that can help you decide whether you should be undergoing certification or not. We looked at the various kind of standards and frameworks and regulations and mandates that could apply to you and can help you in deciding whether you should get yourself certified or not. And then the must do security checklist, 5 of them specifically. Those are the 5 focus areas that you should take care of no matter what is the maturity of your startup. Now, having said that, I would like to address questions. So Shambhavi, do you have any questions for me?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Shalindra. Are there any questions from the audience? If we have, we can unmute you, or you can write in the chat box, whatever works for you. So I have a question about the access control. So someone is asking, how do we ensure that the access control, like, if there is a, from other softwares, we have an integration, but we don't have a full control there. So how do we manage access control there?
So see, when it comes to integration, it could be inbound integration or outbound integration. Inbound integration is where your system is calling something from outside. Now, in such cases, you have no control over access control because it is entirely the provider of that system that what kind of access control is implemented. In such cases, there is a concept of compensating control in the field of information security, meaning if you are unable to do one thing for whatever reason, it could be maybe it is too expensive to implement that, maybe it is not practical, maybe it is technologically not feasible, or maybe technologically impossible, like this case that you have no control over the access control implemented by someone who's providing integration to you, an inbound integration, right? In which case, what you end up doing is that you identify what is it that you can do as an alternative to cover that lack of security. And when it comes to this specific case, what you can do is that you can ensure that you implement very stringently something called as input validation. Any data that is coming in through that stream is something that undergoes rigorous input validation before it enters your system, because if, let's say, there is someone is able to breach that system and and able to send let's say an SQL query, and yours is an SQL system, and you absorb it and run it, then ultimately your system gets breached. On the other hand, when it comes to outbound integration, access control is completely in your control. So this question itself is kind of not relevant, right?
Right. So I have a question from Kirta here.
Okay.
She's saying that will the industry thought process will significantly change or improve on InfoSec from the least priority when Indian Personal Data Protection Bill became law? What is your thought on it?
No, so we do not need to wait that far. It already happened in 2018. EU GDPR was the trigger. EU GDPR went live in 2018. And if you have read, Indian data privacy law is identical to EU GDPR except for one principle, which is right to be forgotten, which is kind of reducing the expectation. But then, at least the mindset of Indian clients, and even for that matter, it is even my own opinion that, see, when it comes to regulations, you should identify that what are the security aspects that you wish to implement. But if a regulation does not insist that you do something, and you would wish to do it at a later stage in your secure in your startup future, it is perfectly acceptable. What is important is that you conduct a risk evaluation, that if I do not do something today, is it degrading my security posture to a level that is dangerous, either for myself or for my organization or for my clients, right? So contextualizing that, Indian data privacy law, this has been going on since 2019. That was the time when the first draft came out. The expectation was that it will be tabled and it will become a bill this year. Sorry, last year, 2020. 2020 COVID hit. It got postponed to 2021. Even right now, the projection that I have personally is probably it will take another 8 months before it is even tabled in the parliament and it starts becoming a bill. Again, if there are any disputes raised or question marks raised in the parliament, then it will not become a bill for some more time. But having said all of that, you should probably decouple your startup from whether a particular regulation is live or not, is it published or not, is it applicable or not. See, when EU GDPR came, there was a massive panic in the world. And that was because EU GDPR became a regulation in 2018, but regulations do not suddenly go live on day zero. The way it works is that there is a publication of a date that uh, this regulation will become mandatorily applicable to you, let's say 6 months or 1 year or 2 years into the future. So today, no one will question you on that. But 2 years down the line, if you're not compliant, and regulations are not optional, you have to comply with them. So you will be given that much amount of time, which means that even from the day Indian Data Protection Bill comes out and becomes a law, you will still have 2 years of time, and that is what is the actual wording in the law itself, like the draft bill, that 2 years will be given to you. But what happened with EU GDPR was this 2 years was provided, and none of the organizations worried about it till the day it became the law, and then there was massive panic. Even in the organization that I was working with, there was panic. Even to some extent, even I had kind of failed to take care of it while there was still time. Now that does not mean that it was not covered up and quickly the necessary things were done. But why to panic? Go ahead and start planning outwards, right? So I hope that answers your question, that you should not look at when a law is coming up. Start preparing for it, and the more you plan, the more buffer time you will have, because unforeseen things will happen. Your business priorities will change as you go along, and something comes up which is critical, you're not likely to be able to then focus on the plan or the roadmap that you have created for your security. You will have to postpone things. If you have buffer time, you will be able to do that. Otherwise, you are basically calling for trouble for yourself.
Right. There's one more question I have here. If there are any more questions, please, you can raise your hand or write on the chat window. Otherwise, this will be the last question. Someone is saying they have an online publication house where they post blogs, interviews, articles, these kind of things. And there are a lot of they have a comment section where they see recently a lot of bots have come in, kind of there are a lot of comments which are not relevant to the articles and is being posted. So do you think there's a threat? I mean, they should do something about it actively, or because there's 1,000 comments in a day, kind of, which are obviously by a bot. It's being picked up somewhere wrongly by SEO or something. So do you think it's a security issue, or there should be something done about it? Or?
It's not so much as a security. I mean, there is a security issue there. I'll come to that aspect, but it is more of a usability issue. Now, think of it like, let's make a comparison. Let's have two hypothetical organizations, both of them providing the exact same system, which is some kind of an online blog where people are free to comment. One of them has got security systems implemented for these spam bots to be resisted. For example, you can only post comments if you're authenticated, which is only possible to be, or which limits the extent to which spam bots can register and post comments. Or you have some kind of a real-time CAPTCHA. Now, reCAPTCHA is an absolutely brilliant system which automatically, based on heuristics, is able to identify whether the posting is by a spam bot or is it likely to be a human. So one organization chooses that they implement all of these things to resist spam bots. It will obviously cost them time, it will cost them money, because the systems have to be implemented. Someone who has got the expertise needs to actually test it out and ensure that it is functioning properly. Another startup which does the same thing does not do any of this. Over a period of time, what is likely to happen? People who are users of both of these platforms, they will observe that there is a lot of spam on the second one. There is barely any spam on the first one. Naturally, all of them will gravitate towards the one that provides better usability. Now, you can see how focus on security is actually improving business, which is not even directly linkable, right? So this is how you should look at it. Now, this is assuming that you are providing a system of this kind. If you're a user of the system, I strongly recommend that you keep away from these online blogs where spam bots are everywhere. It's because sooner or later you will see a link that you will click, which will download and install a malware on your system. So I strongly recommend that you keep away. See, it's like this, right? There are two neighborhoods. One neighborhood is perfectly secure, like you are assured that you'll be safe in that neighborhood, whereas another one does not guarantee you security. Will you not naturally prefer to be in that neighborhood which inherently gives you better security? That's the same logic that applies in online space.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Shailendra. That was a great session. And as we have come to end of the session, I would like to thank you for such an insightful and informative session. I'm hoping all of us have benefited because there was something new, at least for me, to learn from this. I would also like to thank Numetric for the session and the collaboration. And I would like to thank all the participants who have joined us. Your presence means a lot to us. And we'll be sharing a feedback form, so you can share your feedback there, letting us know where to improve. And do join us for the next session. Thank you. Stay safe until next time.
All right. Thanks, Shambhavi. And thanks, everyone. Bye.